Oh, there he is.
Now do the intro song.
Wait a minute. Dun 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 dun. I can't do dun 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 and call Stephen P. New. He's late. You're late, motherfucker. I've been waiting here. I spent the night here waiting for Stephen P. New to come on. And then all of a sudden I'm looking, I said, oh, he's going to be on. 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 Is he on here? Hell no. No, now here he is. Conveniently late. He's probably had some damsel in distress, or you know how them lawyer people are.
That's exactly right.
Oh, you sound like $1 million.
Oh,
bucks,
shit.
You sound great, man.
Wait a minute. Do I owe you money? What are you drinking there? I got a coffee and I got me a Dr. Pepper too.
I've got coffee, guys.
Yeah, I had my teeth all messed up because Linus is look at this stuff. He fed me, and it's like a thing where it would get caught in my teeth.
That's the last, any kind of food you ever get at this place.
Let me take that all back then.
Ever?
Well, shit.
Hey, welcome to the show, Wrestling with the Rip Rogers. I'm Von Lilas. Nice to meet you. Let me get this background changed so we get the Stephen P. New banner up here.
Does it say Stephen P. New? Does it say live or live?
Yeah, probably neither.
Neither. Okay. Can't
Watch
have everything.
This. Look at this. Look at that.
All right, Stephen P. New.
There we go.
You got me on the right and you on the left. Okay, wrestling was Rip Rogers.
We are very
Stephen
professional here.
Rip Rogers. And okay, hey.
Thanks for joining us today. So I was just asking Rip a little bit earlier while we were doing this show. We take some Q&A questions beforehand. So we are live. We have a chat and everything like that about when you guys officially met. So I guess I didn't realize you met later on, like at a convention or something like that. But you used to go to like the ICW shows and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes. As I've told many times, the first match I ever watched was in August of 1981, and it was one-man gang Ronnie Garvin versus Rip's old tag team partner Ricky Starr for the Southeast Championship. You see that belt right back there? And that was the first match I ever watched, and from that point on, I was just hooked. And as Rip has said, West Virginia, Southern West Virginia, important part of the ICW territory, and these guys would come in and they would run big towns like Beckley, West Virginia, where I am right now, and small towns like Logan, Madison, Roncevert, Welch, and I would see those shows.
So how often do you go? You went all the time then?
I went every so often. I was an 11-year-old kid. It was hard to drive. So, I would go when I could, and it wasn't too long, before the territory shut down a couple years later. And, but I saw a few of the ICW shows, I think in either late 82, and 83.
Nice. Was there any other wrestling around there? Just maybe some as outlaw shows or whatever, but was there other territories around there or TV?
Yeah,
besides ICW,
is a really interesting place because it kind of intersected and overlapped a lot of territories. Let me explain what I mean by that. Crockett would run certain towns in West Virginia, Bluefield, Beckley. Georgia would run Huntington, Wheeling, Logan, Williamson, Logan and Williamson being two small coalfield towns in southern West Virginia near where I'm from. And so, we got a good mix of NWA here with Crockett running at certain towns and Georgia running certain towns. And the first house show I ever saw was in June of 82, and it was a Georgia Championship Wrestling show with Dusty Rhodes versus Kabuki in the main event.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, who ran Charleston?
That was Georgia.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was Ole. Okay.
Yep. And then, but by 85, though, I saw the Great American Bashes 86, 87, and 88 in Charleston, West Virginia. So, but by the time that the Bashes were coming along, that was Crockett. Obviously at that point, Georgia and the Carolinas had collapsed, and collapsed together under Crockett. And yeah, they ran everything in West Virginia at that point. But by the late 80s, WWF had never come any further south than Wheeling, which is in the northern panhandle, about 20-30 minutes from Pittsburgh. And then WWF started running Huntington and Charleston in the late 80s.
Rip, what do you remember about Beckley? Give me some Beckley stories.
Oh, the first time I went to Beckley, I went to the Raleigh County Civic Center there. That's where I had my first match at. So I had my first match with there because Steve Cooper was from Seth, West Virginia. And he happened to go home and saw there was wrestling there. So he wrestled there. And the building eventually burned down. It was a bowling alley, etc. And it was Warren Schirnbach was the promoter, and Shirley Love was the announcer on the TV station there. So he got me booked for the next week. So me and him drove, took my Pinto, and we drove it to Beckley, West Virginia. And I wasn't smart to the business. So I've told the story again, but I'm going to tell you right now so you can laugh about it. So there I am in the dressing room. Warren Schirnbach looks at me and he goes, you babyface or heel? I said, yeah. So, so I didn't know. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Then he asked me, he said, when you get the pencil, go home. So I said, when I get the pencil, go, what the fuck's he's talking about? I'm just talking out loud now. And what the fuck's he talking about? So some guy tells me to grab his arm. So I said, fuck you, motherfucker, right? As I'm going to the ring, I'm supposed to be a good guy, but hell, the stuff I saw on TV, I wanted to be like a bad guy. So I'm yelling at the fans and stuff, but I'm a good guy. So they were a little bit confused. So what the hell, right? So anyway, I have the match there. And Angel Ancevita he was from Oak Hill, West Virginia, and he happened to be home there. He'd been working somewhere. And so I met the Cuban Assassin that night for the first time. So I had this crazy match, and there's B.B. Coleman. He's over in the corner. I'm watching him cut up razor blades and put him on his fingers, right? And I'm going, holy shit, I hope I don't wrestle him. He'll just cut the shit out of me, right? But little did I know that 2 weeks later, B.B. Coleman would be taking me and Hoss Tweed, who was Ed Kerner, another school teacher from Seymour, Indiana. We would be going and work 2 shows for WWF, and we still ain't smart. And I'm working with Georgie Animal Steel and Mr. Fuji and Toru Tanaka, and then of course, I bonded with Jim Myers because he was a coach. Football coach. I was a football coach, and there was Ed Kerner, who was a football coach too. So all the shit happened because of Beckley, West Virginia, WOAY TV, and then because when we went with ICW, I went and got the TV because a lot of them I would get, some Randy got, some Randy or the Miser would get. At one time, we had 14 TV markets.
Yes,
which was bigger than. My God, almost every territory in the United States except Crockett's.
Right.
They had so many markets, and I don't know. I don't think now Tampa didn't have that many, but we went all the way to wrestle in Missouri with Camp Girardeau, Missouri. We had 4 TVs in Illinois alone, and then we had the ones that Memphis had. We had the Memphis, the Evansville, the Louisville, the Lexington TV. Then we had the ones like the Hazard. Then we had TV in Puerto Rico that actually paid us money for a tape. San Francisco would pay us for a tape. 2 tapes in Milwaukee would pay us, and the 2 shows in Montana would pay us. So we'd be making the tapes. We would dub them out. And when the bus would go, whatever the bus thing was, would go on strike, I'd be in my Pinto delivering the loop, take about 24 hours and just delivering all those fucking tapes.
Yeah, and you guys were, you mentioned Hazard and that Eastern Kentucky portion. So you come east of Lexington into Kentucky and then into southern West Virginia, and then that toe of Southwest Virginia. You've got Lebanon, Virginia.
That's where Hoot Gibson was
That's
from,
where
ladies
Hoot
and
Gibson
gentlemen.
was from. Hoot Gibson, first professional wrestler I ever met live. He used to vacation at South Holston Lake in Bristol, Virginia, and he was fishing buddies with some friends of ours from Abingdon, and they knew I was a big wrestling fan. And when we would go to South Holston Lake, you guys were also in the Tri-Cities on Channel 11 in Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City.
Right.
And so I could watch it on WOAY, or I could watch it on one of the Bristol stations when we went down there. And our friends from Abingdon, our fishing buddies, knew that I was an ICW fan, and they brought Hoot to the campground one weekend and said, somebody would like to meet you. And I was like 11, 12 years old, and it's Hoot Gibson.
Oh, fuck.
And I just completely marked out as, 11, 12-year-old kid meeting this guy that I'm seeing on television. I didn't even know the right questions to ask him. I was just kind of in awe, and he signed a poster or something for me. And it was the first professional wrestler that I ever met in person, Hoot Gibson.
So
holy shit.
In ICW only, who was your favorite from ICW?
Well, I loved all the baby faces and I hated all the heels. So I loved Ronnie Garvin, of course, and I loved when they turned Crusher Broomfield face. I loved Crusher Broomfield, and I loved Leaping Lanny. Who couldn't love Leaping Lanny? High flyer, talented, seemed like the nicest guy in the world. On the shows. And so, and what really I loved so much about ICW were the storylines. I just thought, and Rip, I don't know exactly who was booking all that stuff, if that was Angelo or if it was all of you guys, but whether it's Ronnie Garvin breaking kayfabe on Randy Savage's name and being Leaping Lanny's brother, or the mop they put on Pistol Pez Watley's head, and he wore that stupid thing around for a long time, or the pose down. The first heel versus heel that I ever remember was Hustler Rip Rogers versus Randy Savage in a bodybuilding contest.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, whoa, this is two bad guys fighting each other here, and then the time that Ronnie Garvin broke Ox Baker's dentures.
Oh, that was
I
awesome.
laughed myself stupid, even as a little kid, because I was scared to death of Ox Baker, Kabuki, and Radamias. And those guys scared me to death as a kid. And Ox Baker talking about the heart punch and killing people and all of that scared me to death. And then I realized he's got dentures like my grandpa. Can he really be that scary if he's got dentures and he's out there talking about his inability to eat a steak because of the one-man gang, Ronnie Garvin? So, the kayfabe was starting to fall away by the time of the Ox Baker denture thing.
God, that's great.
So, did you ever think about getting into wrestling? Did you ever do anything in wrestling besides, what you're doing now, obviously, but like beforehand, get into wrestling at all?
No, I'm about 5'6". I had to gain 5 pounds to go to basic training in 1989. So I'm other than perhaps having
a perfect manager, referee.
Yeah, I could have been a manager or referee, but I wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 14 years old. And, I've stayed hyper-focused on that. So never thought about getting into the wrestling business.
Give us a couple things in your background there. What?
All right, yeah. Let's
what
take
you got.
Some of that.
You got all kinds of stuff. I can't see it.
Yeah, over here. Maybe we try to do this. You guys tell me what you're looking at here.
Well, I see some belts, and now I see nothing. Oh, belts up there, yeah.
Right. That's a Smoking Skull belt. That's a big gold and a Mid-Atlantic And I hope that I can get this close enough for you. Recognize that, Rip?
That's our belt.
Yeah, that's our
That's
belt.
wild.
Yeah. And so here's some autograph stuff. I got that
Wow.
from Cornette recently. This is signed by Harley.
Holy
See
shit.
that? And my favorite wrestler of all time, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And I
Nice.
loved these mellow yellow cans when I was a kid. And so I bought that collection back a few years ago. That's a, let me see. Yep. That's a Charlotte signed by Flair and Steamboat. And one of the most prized possessions of mine, that is the Southeast
Eastern belt.
belt and an autograph from Ronnie Garvin to me. I
Wow.
purchased that from him a few years ago. That's one of my most prized possessions. I'll try to get it on these legends.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of these legends of pro wrestling. You know, you have autographs from Harley Race, the Destroyer, Von Raschke, Vern, Thez, Bockwinkel, Bob Orton Sr., Bob Orton Jr. This is that's from Starrcade '83, the dog collar match between Piper and Valentine. That's a poster of the King. A couple years ago, we had him at the Bash in Beckley, and here's a poster that I've had since October of '91.
Sid Justice.
Huntington, West Virginia. Rowdy Roddy Piper versus the champ Ric Flair. I was in college at Marshall and got to see that house show. It seemed like they taped all of those WWF shows for about 4.5 freaking hours to Huntington Civic Center.
Yeah.
There's some displays of the Four Horsemen, some autographs, some autographed magazines I've got.
Dang.
And I used to love these NWA Ringsiders that you could buy at the Georgia Championship Wrestling matches. And they were just little 4-page poster books, really. And that is a robe that Tully was going to wear to Starrcade. It lights up. And I bought that.
Holy cow.
A few years ago. A Smoky Mountain vinyl jacket.
Move the camera up just a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. And
I see everything but a autographed picture of the Hustler Rip Rogers there. We've got to get that taken care of.
You absolutely do. I've got an autographed book.
Oh, you do?
But I don't have an autographed poster from Hustler Rip Rogers. But this is what I call my comfort room, my happy place at my law office, because behind me is the pro wrestling. To that side is the Star Wars collection. And over there is the comic book collection. So this is my happy place at my law office.
That is awesome, man.
Hey, on your comic book collection.
Yes.
I'm a Marvel man.
I am too.
Okay. Fucking DC's bullshit. Nothing could hurt Superman except green kryptonite. Where all of a sudden we got Spider-Man, Peter Parker never gets no pussy. He's always suffering. Aunt May ain't got no money. We got Matt Murdock, who's Daredevil. He's fucking blind.
Right.
You know, all of a sudden we got Dr. Don Blake. He's a fucking gimp like me. Right. So all the Marvel comics, they were always suffering. They were always the baby faces.
Sure. And the X-Men, you know.
Oh, all the X-Men. Yes.
Or the X-Men. Outcasts.
Yeah. Look at Ben Grimm's walking around with 3 fingers, right? 3 fingers and a thumb. Well,
since we're marking out about comic books, why don't we do this? If you guys have the time, so do I. There's my rack of graded books.
Oh, wow. Graded, huh?
Yeah. And you can see a bunch of them.
That's pretty cool.
Here's the Poison Ivy.
Wow.
Yeah, a bunch of really great books. This is a McFarlane, signed by McFarlane Spider-Man. First appearance of Zatanna. I love her. Love Batman. And let me bring
Who
you
wrote
over
Batman? Who wrote Batman?
Bob Kane.
That's right. Okay, I was just checking, see if you knew what the fuck was going
Well, you
on.
just went and read it.
Oh, he read. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't have a Bob Kane Batman.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, here, obviously, I like a lot of the Star Wars books. I
Jesus.
think I've got about every Star Wars. There's some Daredevil. And then I'll show you the pride of my collection. Some of them. That's
It must be nice being a rich and famous lawyer, man. Look at all this stuff he's got.
This is the Fantastic Four first appearance of Black Bolt that Gene Simmons says he based the Demon's outfit in part.
Oh, yeah.
Under the Demon outfit are based on that. And this graded 7.5 giant size X-Men #1. It's the first appearance of the quote new team with Wolverine in it. And speaking of that short guy from Canada, can you guys see that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Oops.
Yep. Oh, don't break him now.
All right. It's a Hulk 181 autographed by Stan Lee.
Wow.
That's cool.
And because there's a debate amongst comics fans, there's a Hulk 180 autographed by Stan Lee. So whether Wolverine's first appearance was 180 or 181, I've got both of them. Huge Star Wars fan. There's a bag. You could buy those at the grocery store back in the day.
Yeah.
For 99 cents. That's Star Wars #1, 2, and 3 in the bag. So, yeah.
Who knew we were going to get a tour of memorabilia today? That's pretty cool.
Well, Rip and I talked about that, but if we're going to talk about my happy place here, we've got to talk about the comic books as well as
cool.
the wrestling. It seems like, for the very reasons that Rip was saying, who the good guys are, who the villains are, and pro wrestling just overlaps a lot with comic books. I think Jim Cornette's a big comic book collector, and I usually try to get him for his birthday some type of graded book, and he always loves that. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Hey, back to wrestling. This is a wrestling show, so we're gonna go back to wrestling.
Heck yeah.
Do you have a show that you went to in person that stands out, that was one of your favorite, or any of them that you would put up there?
I would say that the Great American Bash 1987.
Were you there?
There was a David Allen Coe concert beforehand, and then a great show topped by Flair and Rhodes with a dusty finish. And the Road Warriors were on that card, the Midnight Express, that the whole cast of characters that were with Crockett at that time, and I just thought that's probably, I've been to WrestleManias, I've been to Royal Rumbles, I've been to SummerSlams, I've been to AEW's premiere in DC, seen a ton of shows, nitros, pay-per-views, what have you. And I think that Great American Bash in 87 is probably the best time that I've ever had at a pro wrestling match.
That's cool. Do you watch today's product? Do you watch
wrestling?
Do?
Yep. I usually record it, and then I'll try to get a couple of hours where, I can fast forward through the marginal stuff or stuff that I don't like, fast forward through the commercials. But I try to take in Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, and Collision every week. And with my schedule, I'm lucky to do that some weeks.
That's awesome, man. So what's it like being the most over lawyer in the world right now? What's that like?
It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice, I'll tell you. But yeah, I've been really blessed from the time that Cornette started putting me over when I sponsored his show. And I was doing some legal work for him in the background at that time. Everything's just kind of seemed to snowballed. As you can imagine, if you're Jim Cornette's lawyer, you're going to stay busy. because someone is always offended. But more so than that, Jim's got a great business mind. So, I'm always talking to him about these ideas and, these things that he wants to do and how best to protect himself. And, like getting the trademark to the Midnight Express a number of years ago. That was a really smart thing for us to do, and it was something that had never really occurred to Jim. Yeah, he had a common law trademark in Midnight Express, but once we applied to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, that put that issue to bed. But since Cornette, everything's kind of snowballed. I have been greatly blessed in my law practice, both on the side, of what I do day in and day out. I handle some really big cases, do a lot of things that I love doing, do well at it. And then on the other side, I've had people, some people, their cases and their things I can't talk about. Other times it's not a big surprise. The people in the professional wrestling industry who I represent from time to time, help them take care of things. Kevin Sullivan is a great friend of mine. I do whatever Kevin needs when he calls up. And just recently applied for a trademark for the Queen of Extreme for Francine. And, it seems like we're always doing some things like that. Got Rock and Roll Express for the Rock and Roll Heat Seekers. And I'm not an intellectual property lawyer myself, but I have a business with a guy named Dusty Gwynn, who is an intellectual property lawyer. He's registered before the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So he does everything before the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And if it comes down to litigation or potential litigation, that's kind of my department.
Wow, that's good to know. So
yeah,
maybe we should trademark Hustle Rip Rogers.
Absolutely. It's long overdue.
So I don't know what all you can say, but how did you get connected with Cornette in the first place? Was it just because you're a wrestling fan? Did you reach out to him? Did he know you? How did your first meeting ever take place?
Well, I'll tell you that story in January of 2004, and it's up. The autograph is up there in the corner. We had a case in law school that we had to study. It was called Roy and Ruby Massey versus Jim Crockett Promotions et al. That's Latin for and others.
Well, how about that for you being a wrestling fan, and then you
so let me put this in perspective.
Wow, that's awesome.
In the early to mid 90s, I kind of got out of wrestling about 92, 93. I'd maybe watch Mania and Starrcade. Wasn't really feeling the product at that time in both WCW and WWF. But then I go to law school and I don't take a television. But at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Morgantown, West Virginia, they would show Raw and Monday Nitro every Monday night. And so my professor comes in, Professor Tom Cady, professor of torts and insurance, God rest his soul. He just passed away a couple months ago. He comes in one day to class, the torts class, midway through the very first semester, and he goes, "Who here is a wrestling fan?" Uh-oh. And my buddies go, "New watches wrestling downtown every Monday night." Professor goes, "Oh, you brief Roy and Ruby Massey, and on Wednesday when you come in, you brief the rest of the class, and I want it with feeling, New." So I have to come in, I have to review the case. It's about the failure to provide security at the Beckley, Raleigh County Armory and Civic Center. And some fan had thrown a ring marker in the ring and hit Bobby with it. Stan comes out of the ring and punches Roy Massey and breaks his orbital socket. Security takes Mr. Massey and his wife to the back, thinking we'll get a couple of autographs, we'll smooth this over. Cornette cuts a promo on him. Cornette calls him a black lung MFer, a no good son of a bitch, and and just cuts a promo on him, which then causes him to hire a lawyer and sue Jim Crockett, the Beckley Armory, the Midnight Express, and everybody. So the professor makes me tell the story and explain who these characters are. Beautiful Bobby, ladies and gentlemen. Who is beautiful Bobby? And I've got to tell who Bobby is. Sweet Stan Lane. Rock and roll Ricky Morton. Who is that, New? And I've got to tell the story. I have to tell what's going on in the ring. And one of the issues in the case, I kid you not, you can read the case. One of the issues was whether it was humanly possible to put as many swear words in as short a period of time as the witnesses said Jim Cornette did. That was one of the issues that the West Virginia Supreme Court had to decide. So the class is just rolling laughing at all of this. And there's a Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte in January of 2004, and I knew that the Midnight Express were going to be there. And I thought, I'm going to take a copy of this case down there, and I'm going to get it signed by the Midnight Express. Lawyer Mark here, right? I've got my little case. It's printed out. It's 12 pages. And Cornette just popped over there. Motherfucker, why the fuck are you all studying this in law school, motherfucker? I mean, he just pops over the fact he couldn't believe that we studied that in law school just a few years before. He put it in his book a few years later because he loves the fact that he's in a law book in West Virginia. And we bonded after that. And then, fast forward 10 years or so, Last is doing his podcast. And, Brian Last calls me up one day and he says, hey, look, I think this Cornette podcast is going to take off. You may want to get in on the ground floor here. And I said, I think you're right, Brian Last. I think Cornette is money, and I'd love to be a sponsor, and the rest is history.
Wow. So how long has that been?
That was 2016, I believe.
2016. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So, excuse me if you said it. Who won? How did the case end?
Well, the judge at the trial court dismissed it early. It goes to the Supreme Court. They write this really funny opinion and comes back, and it gets settled out of case. The insurance companies, I don't think Crockett had to go into pocket, but I think between the insurance companies for the Armory providing the negligent security and the insurance companies for Crockett, they all got it settled after the appeal was done. But I think Jim Crockett's deposition was taken in that case. And Cornette, if you've read that Midnight Express book, Cornette wrote down every night, everywhere they were, what the house was, and what they were supposed to have been paid. And then Crockett comes in the deposition, and he's under oath, and he's testifying inconsistently with what Jim knew the house was, how much money they made, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's funny to hear, Jim tell that story about Crockett having to give that deposition in that case.
That's wild. So did you talk to Cornette then about the case?
Yeah, we talked about it. I've talked to the lawyers here in West Virginia that just, that they're like, it's the craziest thing I was ever involved in, Steve. And I was like, well, if it had Corny and the Midnight Express and Jim Crockett Promotions, I don't doubt it.
I mean, what are the chances you get that? So then that got you connected with Cornette. Then you started sponsoring the podcast. And then you guys have just been, we'll call you friends now, right? Since then. So
yeah, absolutely. And that kind of really restarted my interest in professional wrestling. I started building out my collection of things that I'd always wanted or that I had when I was younger, and then other sponsorships like All-Star Wrestling. And I met Rip a couple years later. He came back to a show in Madison, and I get to tell people like Ronnie Garvin or Rip Rogers or Crusher Broomfield, how great it was watching them as kids. Ronnie now is a part-time West Virginian. In the summer months, he lives in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, and he snowbirds to Florida. And, occasionally I'll call him, wish him Merry Christmas or something like that. So it's just been a lot of fun. I love the business side of it. When I get to deal with WWE or AEW or TNA or, NWA, whatever it is, I like the business side of it. I love my wrestling clients. I wish I could give you guys my list of wrestling clients, but there's no way that I'm going to breach any kind of privilege or anything like that. But a lot of guys through listening to Cornette or just otherwise, we'll exchange phone numbers. I'll get a call from somebody about, an issue, a provision in a contract that they're reading, or a situation they're having personally. Jamie Noble. Jamie Noble is from Hanover, West Virginia, still an agent with WWE. He wrestled in WCW, lived his dream. I'm so proud of that boy. And, he and his wife had a situation happen here in West Virginia, and Jamie's on the road. He's freaking going to Saudi Arabia and everything else in the world. He's like, can you help me get this situation taken? Of course I can. So I just try to make myself available as much as I can. I try to keep the heat at a minimum. Everybody seems to want to try to stir up stuff. They particularly the internet wrestling community wants to try to make something out of nothing or what have you. But I try to keep the heat to a minimum.
Well, you're not going to mention wrestlers, but I'm going to mention a wrestler because he was just on our show a couple weeks ago, and he brought up your name. So again, you can say what you want or can't say what you can't say or whatever, but he did bring you up. So then this actually appeared on Jim Cornette's podcast a little bit, and they were wondering if Stephen P. New was going to remember them now after being so big time. But Ace Steel was on our show, and he put you over big time and said that you were helping him out with the AEW stuff. And he couldn't say enough nice things about you. Anything you can comment on the Ace Steel and the AEW stuff?
Well, the only thing that I'll say there, and I heard what Ace said, very kind to me. We are greatly limited. Ace is correct about that. You're never going to hear me or Ace or Punk comment on the particulars. The only thing that I will say is that those are two of the most stand-up guys that I've ever met in any walk of life, let alone the sport of professional wrestling. And I'll always be here for those guys. That's really all that I can say. And I said this on my own podcast recently for your viewers, your listeners. I do a podcast called House of Kayfabe. We got to get Rip Rogers on there before too long as well. But I said this in dealing with AEW's legal team when that happened. When I first started dealing with Mega and Chris on AEW's legal team, 2019, I think they saw me as an extension of Jim Cornette. I think that they thought they were going to get on the phone and I would cut a Cornette promo or something like that. I'm not. I'm not Jim. I'm not on anybody's Mount Rushmore of anything. But the longer they dealt with me, the better the relationship got. And I think that, through all those situations in the last year and a half, that helped the situation greatly for me to have what I believe is a good relationship with the upper management of AEW. And Punk's obviously happy. He's in a good place. Ace is happy. He's in a good place. And I'll always be here for those guys. And as Ace said, the only person, and granted, she's not completely objective and unbiased, but the only person not subject to an NDA, who's not subject to confidentiality provisions, is Ace's wife, Lucy. And so, maybe one day she tells the story.
Man, I got a couple questions. So what I heard about all that is it sounded to me like you said that Punk and Steel were innocent and you got them a good payoff. So that's just what I heard out of all that. But
I can't confirm or deny.
Can't confirm or deny. The other thing is, so on the whatever you call it, an NDA, is that what it's called?
Yeah, non-disclosure agreement.
And is that for life?
Yes.
It is for life.
It is. Yes.
And then let me ask you this question. I don't know if you can answer it or not. Why did Steele's wife, why was that not placed on her? Was that part of just like the deal, or is it?
That was just part of the deal.
So she could comment on it, but nobody else can. I find okay. Maybe we need to get her on here then. But no, that's awesome, man. Somebody in the chat wanted to know your winning percentage. What kind of winning percentage do you have? You have any idea?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good whatever. I think I've lost 7 trials out of 55. So whatever that maths to, divide 48 by 55.
It's a pretty good record.
Yeah, that's a pretty good record in 25 years of trying cases. Every now and then, speaking of a case, and this is a matter of public record, Cornette commented on the guy slicing his arm open with the light bulb a few years ago. And we went to Pennsylvania and sued and, went through all this money and expense and all of that kind of stuff to go all the way to Pennsylvania and bring a lawsuit. We get the financials. They've made $800 on the shirts, and Cornette spent over 10 grand. And Cornette's like, God damn, drop it. And he finds out they've sold $800 worth of t-shirts. To take it to the mat, it's going to cost about $50,000 to pursue $800 worth of Jim's likeness on some type of an outlaw t-shirt. And, every now and then somebody that doesn't like Cornette will needle me. Well, you lost the temporary restraining order in the Graver case. Yeah, we lost a temporary restraining order because Cornette didn't want to spend 50 grand chasing $800 worth of t-shirts.
That is awesome. So ever since Ace Steel has been on here, there's been a lot of stuff about you. And then Cornette came out with that little clip about our clip. So that even, blew it all up a little bit more. But I, just reading through the comments and stuff, there were a lot of people out there that just almost thought you were not even a real person, just like a character on Cornette's podcast. Have you gotten any of that? What do you have any?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people will, inbox message me or something and be like, are you a real guy? Are you really licensed to practice law somewhere? We thought you were this character, because Jimmy's got these characters on his podcast, the landscapers and the contractors and the people that work for him, and they've all got these names that he gives them and, this, that, or the other. And I honestly think that a lot of people thought that I wasn't a real guy, which is mind blowing to me because I'm just me, I'm just a guy here in Beckley, West Virginia, blessed to be doing what I've dreamed of doing since I was 14 years old, who happens to love the sport of professional wrestling. I've got a law license in the state of West Virginia and have for 25 years. And I've got cases from New York to California right now in about a dozen different states. And, so I'm doing well and I'm 100% real.
Yeah, somebody just asked if you do, you take cases nationwide, basically, or not just in your area. That's
and I can explain that. This is the boring part of the program, viewers. You're going to hear about the law. Another Latin term. Vaughn's like, shoot me now, Rip. He's going to use another Latin term.
No, good, man.
But it's called pro hoc vice. And if you have a license in your home state, and you associate with a lawyer in another state, like I'll be doing in California soon, that lawyer basically sponsors you and says, look, this guy isn't a goober. He's not going to mess this case up. And we need to admit him on a temporary basis in this state. And that's how I've got cases in New York, New Jersey, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. I got a big case against the New York Times in Alabama right now for the son of the Marshall University athletic director. And I'm telling you, I'm hot about it. I'm pissed off, and we're going to tag the New York Times, I believe, in Alabama.
Wow. Shit. Breaking news right here on Wrestling with Rick.
We survived their BS motion to dismiss on First Amendment grounds. They did this boy wrong. They said that he was involved in a shooting and a murder after a basketball game, and he wasn't even there. He was back at his dorm room, and I can't wait to do that case in Alabama.
Wow, that's good, and good to hear you fired up, man.
Yeah.
Hey, how much business? You don't have to, be specific or anything. How much business do you think you get from Cornette's podcast? I mean,
we probably get 10 calls or 10 contacts through the website a week. Easy. That's on the low end. Some of the things, it's just outside of my area of specialty. Jim makes people believe that I can do anything in the world, or like that I specialize in everything in the world, and I don't. and I try to call the Cornette listeners back as well as I can, just to explain to them or to guide them through the process if I can, if it's a do-it-yourself kind of thing. And there's lots of stuff in the law people don't realize. There's lots of do-it-yourself kind of things that you can do. Other things may just be outside of my area of expertise or specialty, and I tell the people that I'd say anywhere from 10 to 15 a week, I'll get contacted by somebody.
So it's been worth it on your sponsorship of the show.
Absolutely.
Were you responsible for the theme music or your commercial music, your sponsorship music, the words, any of it? Did you have to approve it at least?
I did not. That was sprung on me, and I loved World Class back in the day. I love the Von Erichs. I'm looking forward to seeing the movie this weekend. And when World Class came on ESPN, man, it might have been 85 or so. But and I have to say something. I always like to remember my dearly departed uncle, Tommy Dwayne Lee. And Tommy Dwayne, he had one of these huge West Virginia wildflower satellite dishes out in his front yard in about 1982, 1983. And Tommy Dwayne would record wrestling for me from all over the country and bring me like a bag of VHS tapes. So very early on, you're asking about wrestling that we got access to here in West Virginia. My uncle was taping everything from around the country that he could for me. I probably got to see World Class before it came to ESPN, in the mid 80s. But that's the World Class theme. I did not approve any of that. And Brian Last and Jim Cornette just sprung that on me one day, and all of my friends popped. And, lots of people say now, well, daggone, you knew. I can't hear the World Class theme now without thinking of your stupid ass. So that's kind of the rest of the story on that. But that was a guy named Rocky the Ramon who put that together for Cornette and Brian Last. But I love it.
You want to give it to us again, Rip? You got it?
I need to do stereo, but I can't split my voice or anything like that.
So it says something about the mud shows or something. You ever get heat from any outlaw wrestling companies?
Yeah, the Graver case that I told you about. Basically, anytime Cornette starts to criticize something, I'll get a little bit of I'm collateral damage to some of Jim's rants every now and then. I bet Rip can identify with me there on being the collateral damage.
What the hell, right? Hey, anytime you're messing with geniuses, they're all out there, and you take the good with the bad, because if you didn't let them do the bad, you wouldn't get to see the good.
That's exactly right. So, occasionally I'll have the Outlaw Mud Show guys or the people that don't like him criticizing AEW quite so much. And that's a thing that I try to explain to people. I'm not Cornette, obviously. He's considered one of the greatest of all time. His tag team's considered one of the greatest of all time. I'm not an extension of him. Don't share all of his opinions. Share a lot of them. Share most of them. But not all, including some of the stuff on AEW and some other things. But, I do get some flack back from the Outlaw Mud Show types every now and then.
But you said earlier you still watch AEW, though. So
yeah,
he watches it, but typically criticizes it. But do you enjoy any of it?
Oh, yeah. I enjoy I love Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I met him in 2019 over WrestleMania weekend. Jim was there announcing for MLW, and Jim introduced me to MJF and Selena De La Renta, and I got to meet Dan Severn that weekend and a bunch of really other great people. Court Bauer, I like Court. I don't think that Brian Last cares for him very much, but I like Court very much. I like Mr. St. Laurent, and I've always enjoyed MLW's product, but I love MJF. I think he's going to end up being one of the greatest of all time when this is all said and done. And, Jim was telling me in 2019, watch this kid. When
Yeah.
he was with Dynasty and he was with Hammerstone and he was with Richard Holiday, Jim told me before the shows started, he said, watch the kid I introduced you to, MJF. He's going to be the biggest thing in this business. And he said the same thing about Selena De La Renta. And, I love her to death. I'm waiting for her to get her shot. But I watch AEW, Dynamite and Collision every week. There's a lot on there that I like. I like more of the traditional wrestling. I like Ricky Starks. I love Big Bill. He's a great guy. We had him in Beckley here a couple of years ago.
Might be the first person that's ever said that.
Hey, I am so proud of that young man and everything that he's been through in his personal journey.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And what he's overcome. I can always respect somebody who has conquered their demons and gone on, because it's real easy for all of us in any walk of life to give in to our demons and have something bad happen. So I'm proud of that young man, if for no other reason, kind of what he's been through. But yeah, I like the more traditional guys. I like Christian. I'm glad Edge is there. Brian Danielson. I'm just not into some of the Japanese style stuff or what have you. And I think their women's division is finally getting some come up. I think it's taken them a long time to get their footing, but I think Tony Storm's just a gazillion bucks. And I'm glad Thunder Rosa is back.
So in the wrestling, people in wrestling, who either do you think is the most famous wrestler you met, or maybe the most happy for you to meet? Like who's the one that you met and you're like, I finally got to meet so-and-so?
I'm going to tell this story because I met Dusty Rhodes one time at a fan fest in Charlotte. And, as you can see from my display back here, he was my favorite growing up. The common man, and I didn't know that this was Virgil Runnels that was booking all this stuff. To me, he's the guy with the Hard Times promo, and he's the guy in Georgia and Florida and the Carolinas. Hell, I saw him show up in Madison Square Garden one night unexpectedly, or at least, unexpectedly on an MSG show in about 1982. And to me, he was bigger than the world. I get to meet him at this fan fest in the early 2000s. And I hand him my cell phone and I go, will you record my voicemail? Yeah, $50. Okay, Dream. Here's $50. And so he goes into the Kings and Queens and Slip in the Alley and Eat Pork and Beans promo. And he gets to the end of it. And I'm over there watching him and I say, tell him who you are. And he goes, man, they know who the fuck I am. That's how my voicemail ended. But I kept that as my voicemail message for many times, for many, many years that he started. Hey, you have reached Steve New's cell phone. This is American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
That is awesome.
And so to me, of all the people I've met, of all the people that I've spent, a lot of quality time with, just that one interaction, and I had to pay $50 for with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes is right up there. But Vaughn, and I know we're running short on time here, guys, but man, I am abundantly blessed, to be able to interact with people like Hustler Rip Rogers. 1/3 of the Convertible Blondes. We haven't spent enough time talking about Rip Rogers here. And, Vaughn, whether it's with me or some other ICW fan that you get back on here, talk about Hustler Rip Rogers and a guy in ICW, WCW, whatever it was that could go. And he's teaching young wrestlers. The people who have respect for Rip Rogers, they know he's the real deal. They know that he knows, what we used to say in the Army, what right looks like. Hustler Rip Rogers knows what the professional wrestling industry is supposed to be, what you're supposed to do as a wrestler. And I mean, it's in Hustler's DNA, and he's passing that on to the younger generation now because he knows. You listen to those names. WWF, are you kidding me? You know, he was a part owner with Angelo Poffo, Randy Savage, Ronnie Garvin of in my opinion, a great little independent outlaw territory that ran and put on great matches and great cards. So to be able to develop a friendship with somebody like Hustler Rip Rogers, where they've got your cell number, they've got you on Facebook, Les Thornton, someone like that, you know, who feels comfortable texting or calling you and saying, hey, I've got a question for you. It could be about a freaking dishwasher warranty or something. and I'm going to take that call and help those people out as best I can.
It's a great promo on you, Rip. Maybe he owes you money, man. That was awesome.
I'm tearing up over here.
It was very good, man. Hey, and it's been mentioned in the chat, and I haven't said anything. Thank you for your service as well. So people were saying that.
Yeah,
and that was awesome.
Tomorrow, December 23rd, that's my entry date into the military. I signed up 6 days after my 17th birthday, and I was in tanks. And you know, I went to basic training at 17 years old, went to Fort Knox, became an armor officer, and I'm really proud of my military service. I couldn't have gone to college and law school had I not joined the military like a lot of other sons of coal miners. But yeah, I'm proud of my service. Loved all those guys and gals that I served with for 20 years.
That's awesome. You mentioned a podcast. We're getting ready to wrap up here. You mentioned your podcast. What else you got? What do you got to plug? I mean, you got the law office. I mean, everybody hears that on Cornette. You can plug it here too. But the podcast,
go to newlawoffice.com, 87750-STEVE. You can email me, steve@newlawoffice.com anytime. If I can't help you, I will do my best to try to point you in the right direction. And you can find me on Twitter at Stephen P. New, and the podcast that I do with a gang of other guys here in Southern West Virginia that I love dearly, House of Kayfabe. And you can find us anywhere on the social media, YouTube. Give us a like. Rip, I'd love to have you on sometime. You are, make no mistake about it, you're a legend, my friend. If you don't believe me, you ask any other fellow legend of yours, and they're going to tell you the exact same thing that I just said. You will always be over in my book. I hated you so bad as a little kid. You and Gary Royal and Ricky Starr and Pez Watley. I despised the convertible blonde. They were awful, awful heels who beat up my babyface fan favorites that I was rooting for. But you got so much to be proud of, Rip.
Holy shit.
All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on here. That was awesome, man. Today was great. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me on, guys.
You were wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun.
I said, get ready, get ready, get ready. I got the dots on. I got the elbow ready, baby. We're gonna see it. Let's do it right now.